Today we're going to be making this crepe paper juniper branch, and it has these really nice blue berries on it. And these are all of the tools and materials you're going to need to make it. We'll be using crepe paper, and we will be using extra fine crepe paper in Juniper, and then also in Espresso. To make the little berries, you're going to need 8mm cotton spun balls, and you're going to want around 10 balls per branch that you make. To add the nice dusty color to our branch, we're going to be using chromium oxide green light PanPastel. And to get the really warm copper color for the branch, we're going to be using burnt sienna. And to apply that PanPastel, you're going to want a couple different brush sizes. I really like this larger brush size to use with that burnt sienna, and then the smaller one for the chromium oxide. To color our berries, we'll be using watercolor, and so you will need a paintbrush and then a very small bowl with just enough water to cover the bottom of your bowl. All the other tools and materials that you need can be found in the project post and in the PDF template, as well as the photo tutorial. Let's get started. The first thing you're going to want to do is color your balls. They will need a little bit of time to dry, so this is the first step I like to do. We're going to be using watercolor, and we're going to be using a mixture of the darkest blue in your palette and a little bit of black and maybe some white to get more of a dusty blue color. Take a really small bowl and just add a little bit of water to it. You only want to add enough water to cover the bottom of your bowl, and we're actually going to be mixing our color in this bowl. So I'm going to take some of the water from that bowl, some of this bright blue, and adding that color back to the bowl. Continue adding color to your bowl and that water, and you can see I really just have a very small amount of water in here. I'm going to take a little bit of black to darken it up. And now I'm going to add just a little bit of white to give it a dusty blue color. So it looks kind of gray, but it is still blue. You just want to keep mixing color until you get that perfect dusty dark blue for your juniper berries. Now I'm actually going to add all of my balls directly to this bowl, and this is a very quick way to color all of your balls so you don't need to paint each one individually. You can just throw them in there, mix them around. Once they're all painted and colored, just take a paper towel, pull each one out, and just set it on the paper towel to dry. And then you can go ahead and let these balls dry, and by the time we're ready to add them to our branch, they should be perfect. Next, we're going to begin making pieces of our branch. So you have 3 different sized fringed strips of juniper crepe paper. You have a small one, medium one, and then a much longer one here. And so you should have 10 large ones, 12 medium, and 12 small. To begin, you're going to take one of your strips. We're going to be doing this to all sizes, so it doesn't matter which one. And we're going to roll between our fingers, and I like to start with the tips because the tip of each fringe actually has another small cut in it. So you get each kind of fringe has a split. You can see that. And then after I've rolled the tips, I'm going to go ahead and roll the base. Okay, we'll do it to the next one. And I'm just kind of rolling it right between my pointer finger and my thumb. Roll those tips, and now I'm rolling the base. Rolling the base of this long piece. And I like to complete this step with all strips before I move on to the next step. Next, you need to grab your 24 gauge wire. Take one piece of wire, and we're going to add glue to the base of one of your strips of fringe crepe. Beginning at one end, I'm going to wrap the fringe just around the very tip of my wire. And once I have that tip secured, I'm going to begin wrapping down the wire. And you really want to angle your wrap down to cover as much space as you can, and so the fringe is spread apart a bit more. We really want more of like a sparse look to these branches instead of having all of our kind of pines closer together. So I'm really angling my wrap down. And with this larger strip, you should end up covering just a little less than half of the wire. Okay, now I'm going to grab another wire and do the same with my kind of medium piece. And each section of fringe is going to get its own wire. So its own 12-inch 24 gauge wire. You end up using 32 24 gauge wires per branch. And you're wrapping the same way with these smaller sections, really angling your wrap down and covering as much wire as you can. When you've finished wrapping all of your fringe pieces onto their own wires, we're going to add color to them. So go ahead and take your chromium oxide green PanPastel. Mine needs a little bit of repair, but it'll still work just fine. You want to take a piece of paper towel. I always like to apply PanPastel over a paper towel because it catches any of the loose powder. I'm going to take my kind of smaller oval shaped brush, tap it in the PanPastel, and then just brush right over the branch. Then I'm going to flip it over so that I can make sure there's color on all sides. Okay. Separate all of your pieces into piles of the same size. You'll also see some of mine I used white wire, and it really doesn't matter. You can use white or green. We're going to be wrapping the wire so you won't see it. Just use what you have on hand. All right, once you've separated those all into piles, I'm going to set them to the side. And next we're going to take a piece of our Espresso crepe paper, and I'm going to cut a width that's about 12 inches long. And just cut that off of my roll here. I'm going to grab my paper towel again, and I'm just laying this piece of paper, crepe paper spread out on top of my paper towel. I'm going to take my burnt sienna PanPastel here and my larger oval brush. All right, so we want our wrap that we are wrapping all of these little branch pieces together to make our big branch to be a more copper color. So I'm going to use this PanPastel to just color one side of this crepe paper, and that's why I'm using this larger brush, so I can cover a lot more surface area. And you only need to color one side, and you don't need to color the entire thing unless you're making many, many branches. We're going to cut this into strips just to wrap and attach our branches together. So I'm just doing a couple inches of this crepe paper, and you just have to color as much as you need. Okay, that looks good. I'm just going to fold this up, just kind of roll it back up. Just make sure those end pieces are even. Take my scissors and just cut this into about 1/2 inch strips, be a little less than 1/2 inch. And you can just stop cutting right where you stopped coloring, and then you can always color some more of this crepe paper if you need to. All right, to begin building our branch, you're going to start with one of the wired fringe pieces, and you need one that's the medium size. Go ahead and take one of your strips, and you'll need your white glue. So I'm going to add just a little bit of glue right at the base. I'm going to begin wrapping, and make sure you're stretching the strip of crepe paper as you're wrapping. Move down as you wrap, and make sure you're adding a bit of glue to the wire as well. I'm going to wrap down about 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to grab one of my small wired pieces, and we're going to add all 12 of these small pieces before we move on to the next size. So add a bit of glue, and then begin wrapping around. Wrap down about 1/2 inch again, and add another piece. We want these little branches and sprigs to be spread out. Juniper is very kind of sparse branches. They're not really full like other pine or fir branches are. So especially at the top of them, we want this to be a little sparse. So you can wrap down a little bit further, leaving at least 1/2 inch between each piece that you add. And also make sure you're adding these on all sides so they're not all just on the same side. As you get further down, you can begin placing these a bit closer together to fill it out. You just really want this top section to be a little more spread out. So I have, let's see, I have 4 more left, so I'm gonna make these a bit closer together. Okay, now that I've finished adding all of my small pieces, this covers about 6 inches. And now I'm going to begin adding my medium pieces. So I'm going to take 4 medium pieces and I'm going to set these aside because I don't want to add these quite yet. So you should have 7 pieces left and we're going to add those all now. I'm just going to finish wrapping the end of this piece. Now I'm going to grab a new strip to begin wrapping with. I always like to get at least 1 wrap in before I add any branches, just so it's very secure. Okay, I've added those 7 pieces. And now we have these 4 medium ones sitting up here. And for these, we're actually going to pair each of these with a larger one. So I'm going to grab a large and a medium, and I'm just kind of lining up the bases, and I'm going to add these 2 pieces in together. So I'm going to wrap down just a little bit further so that I'm about 1 inch below that last one that I added. I'm going to add these 2 together at the same time. I'm going to wrap around twice just to secure it in place, and then I'm going to add another set. I haven't moved down much further from where I just added those first 2, but I am adding these ones opposite. We really want to fill out all the way around the branch. Wrapping down just a little bit. I'm going to take a 3rd pair here. Just making sure I'm adding it kind of on a different side of the branch than those other 2. Okay, taking this last pair with that medium and the large one. Now you should just have these large branches left, and we are going to continue filling out this branch with them. So only leave about 1/2 inch of space between each branch as you begin wrapping down the wire. And just make sure you're really filling out around the entire branch so that it's not just heavy on one side. All right, I've added on my last large sprig here. And now I'm going to look at all my wires that I have down here, and this will form just the base of our branch, but we want to cut these all so they're relatively even. You're going to have like a few stragglers at the end, and if you just left it like this, you'd have just a really thin end. So let's take our wire cutters here, and I'm just going to cut off the bottom like 2 inches to start with and see how that feels. I think that's pretty good, and now I'm going to take another strip because I ran out of that second one I was using, and I'm just going to finish wrapping all of these wires together. And make sure you glue the very end just to secure everything really good. Now we're just going to arrange this branch and make it a bit fuller. So I'm going to start at the bottom and I'm going to angle the branch out, and then I'm going to kind of curve it in like this. And I'm going to do this with all of the branches. Just pull them out, pull it out, and then kind of just curve it back in towards itself. And don't forget about those smaller ones that you added in with the large ones as well. Make sure you're pulling those out and kind of angling them in too. We're going to do the same thing with even the smallest ones. These smallest ones, you'll more just angle them out. There's not quite enough wire to curve them back in. Okay. I'm going to actually kind of roll these between my fingers again just to fluff it back up. Almost like crush them down so they're not so straight. Juniper have they have a lot of movement in their pines. They're not straight like a fir pine would be. Just like to make it look a little bit more wild. Make it so it doesn't look like paper. I'm really just doing this by rolling it between my fingers and moving down on each sprig. Then I'm going to just kind of angle my branch a bit. And now we are ready to add all of our berries. So grab all of your berries. You're going to want at least 10 per branch. And we'll just be attaching the berries with our white glue. So take a berry and just find where it has the hole. And we're just going to add glue all over the side of the berry over the hole, because we don't want the hole to show. And I just like to spread some of the branches out, and the berries are actually attached very close to kind of the center line of your branch. So I like to attach them right where a sprig meets the brown branch. And once this glue dries, it will hold these berries on so well. I start by just kind of zigzagging single berries up the branch, and then I'm going to begin adding them closer together so that they're in little clusters. I'm going to add a berry just up onto one of the sprigs here, and maybe another over here so that they're kind of clustered together. Just really press it into place so you make sure that glue is coming into contact with the crepe paper. But the berries really focus right in this like mid section of your branch. They don't really travel up to the tip, and they're not down towards the base. I think we're done adding all of our berries. You can of course add more than 10 if you like. Here's our finished branch, and I always like to give the branch a bit of a curve so it's not straight. Then you can kind of fluff up those branches around your berries again, since you kind of spread them out to add the berries. Right, just like that. You have your beautiful juniper branches. And I love having at least 3 branches. These are great to add to some winter arrangements or just on its own in a vase. Thanks for crafting with me today.